right? Well, you know what? It is after, it's 12:01, so I think I'm going to call the meeting to order. And the first order of action, I'm going to read the accessibility statement in the Section 6 non-discrimination statement. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones or telephones will be used by all speakers. Large print materials are available upon advance request. If you would like either of these accommodations, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833, and that's extension 202. The notice of non-discrimination rights and protections to beneficiaries with regard to the federal Title VI / non-discrimination protections and state non-discrimination protections is posted in this meeting room. It is available on the Ocolony Planning website. And again, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833, extension 202 for more information. And I thank you all for attending our meeting today. And I'm going to start out with the call of order and introductions. And I'll turn that over to Bill for the roll call.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So Abington, I think I saw John on there.
That's correct, John Stone.
Okay.
And Bruce Hughes, alternate.
Avon, anyone from Avon? Okay, Bridgewater? No?
So
Brockton?
Bob Wood on the line.
Oh, Bob's on here? Okay. All right, so recognizing Bob Wood. I'm not sure if we have his audio, but
I'm here.
okay, cool. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you.
Brockton? Duxbury? East Bridgewater? Easton?
Dave Field.
Greg Swan.
Thank you. Halifax? Hanson?
Hanson's here. Dawn's here.
Yeah,
Welcome.
Debbie's here.
Welcome. Thank you. Hanover? Okay. Kingston? Okay. Pembroke? Okay. Plymouth? No. Plumpton? No. Stoughton? Okay. West Bridgewater? And I know we have Whitman here.
Yep.
We're here.
All right.
Yeah, we're here both.
Okay. How about I saw Glenn, Brockton Area Transit.
I'm here as well. Michael.
Okay, Mike. Anyone from Massdot planning here? Okay. And Massdot District 5, I think I saw Barbara on here.
Hi, yep, Barbara LaChance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anyone else I didn't call that wants to be recognized? Or okay, thank you, and I'll hand it back to Noreen.
Thank you so much, Bill. I'm going to move on to item 2, which is public comments. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move on to item 3, which is the minutes of February 4th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion Dan Whitman.
Second?
Second, Bruce.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4 is communications, and that will be Sean.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. There are a handful of items for the communications packet for this month. The first is regarding to the MBTA's spring 2021 commuter rail schedules. They announced earlier this week what their plan will be for the spring, focusing on preserving their access, responding to their feedback from riders as well as communities. Weeknight service after 9 p.m. will largely remain, where ridership has returned more than in other areas. The next item is in regards to the 2021 Massdot Transportation Innovation Virtual Conference. They are seeking presentation abstracts for their conference scheduled May 25th through the 27th. They ask that the deadline for the abstract submissions is March 8th. The next item is a save the date for the Massachusetts Safe Routes to School spring webinar, which will be held April 14th at 12:30 p.m. And there is a link to register in the communications item. The next is coastal pollutant remediation grants from the Massachusetts Coastal Watershed. The last item is coastal resilience grants. And there is a link in the description for people who would like more information. And that is it.
Any questions for Sean? Thank you so much, Sean.
You're welcome.
I'm going to move on to item 5, which is reports. First report is BAT, and would that be Mike or Glenn?
Yeah, I'll take that. Thank you, Chair. First and most important as always, our safety update. At the moment, all of our people are healthy and on the job. Happy to report. We're focused obviously on getting vaccines for those that qualify, and so far have been doing well there. Although the recent announcement by the governor that teachers are going to move up will push us back a little bit for the majority of our staff. Ridership, as in my other updates, continues to swing back and forth between about 40 to 50% of last year's levels, depending on weather, mostly at this point. Although we are close to having heat available outdoors on the BAT Center platform. Heaters have been installed around the edge of the BAT Center, and next will be installed at each of the shelters along the platform. So we're hoping that makes for a more inviting outdoor experience for our customers. We have hot off the presses a draft comprehensive regional transit plan, which will be going out to our board and then to the general public for comment shortly. So keep an eye out for that. And also, in terms of upcoming JTC meetings, we have new automated passenger counters, automated vehicle locators installed on all of our buses, and that will translate into a new map and information available to our customers on the website, so that or on their phones, customers will be able to click on a bus and see exactly how full it is, how much room it is, and hopefully that will help provide some level of comfort to customers as they make their decisions regarding transit. So we'll have a demo for you on that coming up soon. That is our report.
Thank you, Mike. What a great idea that is for people, to
Yep.
be able to do that, to see, the level of, and amounts of people on a bus.
Yeah, no, it's really nice you be able to see
Yes.
and glance how crowded a bus is.
Yeah, right. Thank you so much. Any questions for Mike? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to go on to B, which is the Greater Attleboro Taunton Regional Transit Authority, which is called GATRA, and that would be
Actually,
Paul.
Excuse me, Madam Chair. I'd like to recognize our guest speaker, and if the chair entertains it, perhaps we can take our guest speaker out of order and move him up. So he has plenty of time for his presentation and questions and answers.
Sure.
Okay. So I see Terry Reagan on the line. So Terry is a principal technical advisor at the United States Department of Transportation's Volpe Center. He's on innovative transportation and financing. He's also a professor at Boston University in city planning and urban affairs. He actually taught one of our staff members here. One of our staff members took one of his courses. So let's see if I should be able to pause my share and allow to turn this over to Terry. Okay. Are you able to share your screen, Terry?
Yeah, it should be coming up now.
Okay, great, awesome.
Did it?
Yep.
Yes.
Great.
Welcome,
Good. Well,
Terry.
well, thank you. Well, thank you, everyone. I put this presentation together to provide an overview of kind of how various transportation modes have been affected by the pandemic and what some of the resulting finance impacts have been. It started as a presentation back in August for the Boston University City Planning and Urban Studies community. And then I've been updating it periodically as people ask for me to make a presentation. So I'm going to go through these slides very quickly. I'm going to try and get it done in under 15 minutes to allow some time for question and answer at the end. So let me just get started. So this slide is just sums up some of the trends I think have been occurring over the past decade and how they might continue into the next decade. You guys being planners probably have real thoughts and insights on this also, so I'd be curious to hear them. You know, I think the pandemic is accelerating some trends that were already happening, and in some cases, the pandemic is really disrupting existing conditions. I think the big distinction that we have seen is that between personal transport, which is basically car, walk, bike, and shared transport, which is Uber and transit and others, have really been affected quite differently. The other two things that I want to focus on in the presentation, the potential change in fuel use by our vehicles, and the use of teleworking and how that really has affected change. This first slide, this comes from Massdot. It was part of the 2010 census, so it's a bit out of date, but hopefully in the next year or so we'll get some updated information. This gives you kind of an overview of, in Massachusetts, how many people use which modes and how far they travel. So I think what you'll see is this, you know, the orange, you'll see is quite dominant, which is the single occupancy vehicle, and all the way up to the top where you have bicycles, which is about 0.6% of total miles and about 2% of journeys. So I briefly mentioned the distinction between personal transport, which is car or walking, versus transit or shared ride. As I say, I think the pandemic has really changed that in the short term. I think a big question for you as planners going into the future is that how much is that trend going to continue? When we look at kind of finances, I think the state, the MPO, cities and towns are facing some real challenges with transportation funding. Currently, the fuel tax, the major source of federal and state transportation funding, and it's facing at least three major challenges. One, the shift away from gas-powered vehicles and towards electric and other non-carbon vehicles. The increase in fuel efficiency of cars, you know, so even those that are using gas are going to be much more efficient. And then third, the increase in teleworking and e-commerce, which means that there will be potentially less kind of personal VMT around. So it's going to be a real challenge for the MPO to take these changes into consideration when you're doing your travel demand modeling and financial projections as you update your plans. Some challenges to the existing collection of transit funding. For transit, the challenges are the state transit funding is a mix of state sales tax, which is fairly flat, fare box revenue, which I don't need to tell you has dropped dramatically, and federal funding, which at least to date has been relatively flat. But a big question is, how is the state going to respond to these challenges? How much will the state potentially step in to provide additional funding? This is showing vehicle miles traveled. It dropped almost 60% early in the pandemic, but as we've continued on, travel is for the suburbs and rural kind of back to normal. In the more urbanized areas, it's still down a bit. This slide is not necessarily related to finance, but I found it quite interesting. An unexpected result of less travelers on the road has been an increase in the rate of fatalities. So it's mostly due to less congestion and people being able to drive faster, resulting in more crashes. But this to me is rather amazing that we're seeing almost a 24% increase in the percentage of highway deaths. Surprisingly to me, Federal Highway Trust Fund receipts for fiscal year 2020 were only 2% below previous years. And with Mass State collection, the state sales tax collection is up 2.7 year over year. But note that sales tax for meals is down dramatically. Interestingly, sales tax on motor vehicles is up about 9%, because I think we've seen a number of people purchasing new vehicles. This chart shows the disparity among transit and shared ride users. One of the things you'll notice is income increases. People are taking fewer and fewer transit rides. And as for teleworking, this slide might be to me to be the most interesting and surprising. The bar chart shows the percentage of people that are teleworking at least 1 day a week by income level. So if you make less than $50,000 a year, only about 20% of the people are teleworking. But if you make more than 100,000, at least 63% are, and it peaks at 85% if you make $200,000 or more. I don't know how this trend will continue, and I'd be curious in the discussion to hear what you think. But I think we're going to see a large number of people who never go back to work at the office 5 days a week. I was reading an article yesterday in which the Baker administration was saying at least half of state workers were going to shift to a part-time teleworking. And I think we'll see that kind of coursing through other industries. So this slide and the next show that Massachusetts as a state, we have the second highest teleworking among the nation at 51%. The national average is 38%. And then with the metropolitan Boston area, which covers your MPO, is the second highest in the nation at 55%. And then e-commerce, we've seen a real shift to shopping online. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but for the second quarter of 2020, e-commerce represented 16% of all retail sales. And a big question is, what are the implications for our downtown retail stores? And what about the increase in trucks delivering goods on our local streets? And so a question I think you need to think about as you're doing your next transportation plan is, how do you account for these potential shifts in how people travel and shop? This is showing traffic volumes supplied by Massdot. Traffic is down most within the Boston urbanized area, so kind of the closer you get to downtown Boston, the greater we have seen traffic volume go down. This was from October, and since then, we've seen an even greater increase in VMT, especially within your areas. This is just showing, something like Sumner Callahan Tunnel is down almost by half. I don't know if you saw it or not, but Massdot developed 3 potential future scenarios of what might happen to travel over the next 3 years. And in all 3 scenarios, you see AM peak hour VMT not reaching the previous level for several years. So one of the things that they have seen is there's a real spreading out of both the AM and the PM peak. The next 2 slides I'm going to show you uses data from people who access Apple Mapping for directions. And so one of the things that they did was put up these mobility charts for cities all around the world. As you can see for Boston, transit is down 42%, but driving's only decreased by 5%. Plymouth County, we've seen a 5% increase in driving. If you look at New York City, a decrease in 43% in traffic. And Providence, you're seeing driving up 25%, but once again, transit down by almost half. And I had sent Bill this presentation, so once again, I apologize for kind of going through quickly, but I hope each of you have the slides and can look at them afterwards. Next, I want to turn to a discussion about the gas tax and electric vehicles. So As you can see in this chart, the gas tax in Massachusetts is about 10%, 10 cents below the national average. And we have about 5 million registered vehicles. Of those 5 million, about 98% use gas or diesel, so about 2% alternative fuel. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I think a major threat to transportation funding is the shift from gas-powered vehicles to alternative vehicles. I did a quick calculation to kind of estimate the average, how much the average vehicle pays. And they pay about $200 to $265 a year in fuel tax. So for as good as it is to the environment that people are going to switch away from it, that's money that we're not going to see go into the transportation funds. So now, you know, some of the shifts away. So as you've heard, GM and many other companies are announcing a shift to all electric vehicles. Just as a note, so since 2008, Congress has appropriated over $140 billion in general funds to the Highway Trust Fund. And I was reading an article just yesterday. Petaluma, California has just passed an ordinance where they're banning any new gas stations, and any existing gas station can't add any new pumps, and they have to add electric chargers. So whether what happens in California will matter to us is a matter of debate, but it certainly is something that you as a planning agency really need to start kind of thinking about. So this is just showing that gas usage has been relatively flat. And then, so as the state grapples with greenhouse gas emissions, so transportation is the #1 contributor. So when they're looking to reduce greenhouse gases, you know, you can see why transportation is such a target. So to deal with this, so the state recently released a report on decarbonization. I recommend all of you downloading a copy of it and looking at it. It lays out a plan to reduce carbon emissions over the next 30 years. And as you are working on your transportation plans over the next 25 or 30 years, you know, the information in this document, I think is quite relevant. You know, so the roadmap assumes over 750,000 new electric vehicles by 2030. That would represent a loss of $175 million in federal and state gas revenues every year for Massachusetts. And this slide is just directly from the report, kind of providing an overview of the transitions needed for decarbonization of light-duty transportation vehicles. And as I mentioned before, electric vehicles currently only make up about 2% of new vehicle sales. So I think we're going to see that number rise dramatically over the next decade. So one of the things that I'm quite interested in, so currently about half the states in the nation have implemented a registration fee for electric vehicles to offset the loss in gas tax. If you look at the map, those states that are in gray don't have this type of fee. You'll notice the entire Northeast does not, but it will be quite interesting to see as things move on, how many states adopt a fee like this. So now I want to turn to transit funding. This slide shows that Mbta fare box revenues are down about 80%. And as we saw before, sales tax is relatively flat. This chart shows weekday ridership on the T. While bus has the highest percentage of previous ridership, commuter rail is far and away the lowest. But in all cases, no line is above like 40% of previous. This is part of that Massdot scenario planning they did for the governor's office. And they don't foresee ridership getting back to normal before June of 2022. And probably the most affected and concern to your area is commuter rail ridership. This is showing that kind of utilization of the train is only at about 10% of capacity. And, a big question is, what does that mean for the future of commuter rail and how we sustain it? So this Massdot scenario projection expects ridership to be about 80%, below 80% less of previous levels over the next 18 months. And next, just a quick shift to air travel. Logan Airport, which is a major economic driver within Boston, Massachusetts, and New England. Boardings were down 82% in October. They briefly peaked up a bit in December, but then have gone back down. Our boardings are lower than the national average because Logan has a higher percentage of international travel that has really been hit hard. And this slide shows some of the economic hits that Massport is taking. Massport depends upon parking fees to support the vast majority of its landside improvements. In October, parking was down 93%. Shared rides were down 90%. And these are going to have a huge impact on Logan's ability for capital programming over the next several years. So that was my presentation, some concluding thoughts. So a good chance the preference for personal transport may increase in the near term at the expense of shared transport. How long of a trend this will be, I don't know. You're going to need smart planners to try and figure that out when you're doing your next transportation plan. But there are three trends that are threatening future road funding: the shift away from gas fuel vehicles, the increase in fuel efficiency, the increased use in teleworking. And one of the things that teleworking has done has really spread out travel during the day. And so the AM and PM peaks are not quite as high as they used to. And that might really aid in congestion relief measures and require some changes in kind of how you plan for future transportation investments. And at least over the short term, shared transport is going to really need to continue to rely on probably federal and state assistance. So if you have any questions, here is my contact information. Feel free to send me an email if you're interested in any of the data that I use. This is all published information. And want to put in a plug for thinking about students from this program when you're hiring your junior planners. So that was it. Any questions?
No, so I just want to thank you for this great presentation. Really interesting. As an MPO, we've been looking at this for last few months and trying to figure out what the future of transportation looks like. And it's funny because probably going back 12 years, our long range plan, as part of congestion management and environmental objectives, we always put in, promote teleworking, and we always looked inwards ourselves. And I think we always had a goal of getting to at least partial teleworking, but we never really had the infrastructure. And then March of 2020 hit, and it was basically sink or swim, and we had to really accelerate putting this infrastructure in place to make sure that our staff were able to work from home, and it's worked successfully for us. And I think that we're just like most companies. Most companies, they had to rapidly put this plan in place, and I think it's worked. And I think a lot of places are going to be questioning, do they once everyone's vaccinated and this thing's gone away, does it is there a need to be having these large workspaces and having staff come in 5 days a week? And I think a lot of companies and workplaces are going to probably start realizing, no, that's not the case. We can have staff work remotely at least part of the time, if not most of the time. And so it's presentation was amazing, and I thank you for your time. And obviously, anyone else has any questions, I don't want to occupy the floor here, but
I do, Bill. I have a question.
yep.
If I could interrupt you for a moment.
No.
Electric car sales, Terry, did you see any sort of trend on that more people are going either to the hybrid or the electric vehicles?
Well, as I said, right now, currently in Massachusetts, it's about 2.5%. I think you're going to see a rapid rise in that number, especially with kind of the cachet of say, a Tesla. My neighbor just bought one. And I think as you're seeing a switch, I think that very rapidly you're going to see that number rise rather dramatically.
Because I see, probably as a New Englander and, the part of the country we live in and our weather patterns, I don't think there's a lot of, I don't know if I want to call it advertising or information on the pros of purchasing an electric car and how does it work in our climate and is it dependable? Sometimes I think that's why people don't vie for the electric vehicle, because they're uncertain, I guess, of the reliability of it.
And I think you have seen a steady improvement in batteries. But certainly, the cold weather dramatically affects performance of batteries.
Right.
To me, what I think is the most interesting thing is how are we as a region and a state going to provide this really vastly different infrastructure to handle electric vehicles,
right,
and shift away from gas. Because I was talking to my wife about this presentation last night. She's like, I'm not getting in an electric vehicle unless I know I can get it recharged, and we don't have a parking space. So
exactly, that's how most people feel.
But I don't know what happens when GM stops selling gas-powered vehicles. I don't know that we have much choice.
Right.
That won't happen.
Thank
Bruce,
you
do you
so
have anything
much.
Chair?
Sure.
Madam Chair? Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, one quick question while we're here. The U.S. Post Office has just placed an order for 10,000 vehicles to replace the AM General trucks. And this is going to be done by Oshkosh and GM. 10,000 vehicles, and only 10% of them are going to be pure electric. Supposedly they're going to have the capacity to convert these trucks later on. But this is the U.S. Post Office. Like in Abington, where I live, they basically run local routes. And still, the majority of these vehicles are going to be gas engine vehicles.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's a question that I have. If U.S. Post Office, if they're looking toward the future for these vehicles the last 20 years, and they're not, the majority of them are still going to be gas engine, what does that tell you?
Well, I don't know that anyone has ever thought of the U.S. Postal Service as a leader in technology or innovation. If I were trying to spot trends, I would see what Amazon, UPS, and FedEx are doing.
Well, just something that we can see on our local streets, and this is, and it's funny, the picture that they post of that mail truck, there was a proposal by the electric vehicle company in Lordstown, Ohio to build them. That's not the vehicle. The vehicle looks like a Ford Transit van. But anyway, that's going to impact us. That's probably going to impact us sooner. I suppose Amazon vehicles are pretty ubiquitous, but the ones I see are all Ram Transit vans. So we'll see.
So I do think we're at the very beginning, at the cusp of a real change. I think the question is kind of how fast that change is, not if there will be a change.
Okay, thank you.
And you as planners, that's a huge question for you as you're trying to figure out, how much roadways do you need? How much space do you need? Do you need to start putting electric charging stations next to your parking meters and things like that? It's a huge transformation. Charles?
Yes, thank you, Terry. We were wondering if you had any insights into how rideshare companies will be responding post-pandemic and their recovery? Because there was really a competing market share to transit pre-COVID-19.
I was, Uber just released their fourth quarter results, and their revenue from ride sharing was down 80%. But their revenue from meal deliveries was up like 65%. And kind of off the cuff, I have heard how many Uber drivers actually like delivering meals more than they like delivering people, because it's kind of less difficult. So, you know, what they have tried to do is branch out. But I think, you know, personally in the short term, I'm not going to get in an Uber until I'm vaccinated and we're kind of past all of this. So I think they are in a tough short-term situation. But I think if you look long-term, I think that there is a shift, especially among people younger than me, in their willingness to not buy a personal vehicle and to use those types of vehicles.
And I think that's a way that people, rideshare and transit, can work together by, if you wanted to be a car-free household, for as an example.
And I think Lyft has teamed up with, I think it is Denver RTD, in which you can plug into Lyft that you want to get from X to Y, and it'll show you how to take your Lyft to the transit station to get on to the rail network to get where you're going. So I would not be surprised to see much more kind of integration in that way. You know, I don't know if you guys realize it, but the major operator of the shared bicycle networks around the country are now Uber and Lyft. You know, Lyft owns, or not owns, but operates the one in Boston. Any other questions?
I have a question. Dan Salvucci from Whitman. Just curious, back a few years ago when we started with hybrid cars, where they were battery operated, and when the battery started getting low, the engine came on, gasoline engine, to recharge the battery. And then when it was charged enough, it would go back on the battery. There was a big push for that. Whatever happened to that? It seems that went to the side, that they stopped making them because people weren't buying them for a reason.
Well, I think Priuses are still that way. I think you can still buy dual powered vehicles. I think the question will be, will the car companies keep making those?
Right, it's whatever they could sell. If there's no market for it, they're not gonna make them. So I'm just quite interested to see what would happen to go full battery operated vehicles, if in fact there may be a market in the beginning, but I don't know. I don't think in my lifetime I will see all electric cars.
Well, but then again, you know, you realize I compare this a lot to light bulbs, in which you know, certainly 20 years ago, every light bulb you had was incandescent, and I don't know that you can even buy an incandescent light bulb if you wanted one anymore.
Oh, so what when I get a few in the house? I'm only kidding.
But you know, to some extent, we're at the mercy of what the producers produce, right?
Right. Yeah.
So I wish I knew the answers to those questions, but I don't. But I do think it's what I want to do was to raise questions for you to ask among yourselves. I don't have the answers.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Mike Lambert from Brockton Area Transit here. Thanks for a great presentation. These are definitely questions that we're wrestling with. We're part of a Massdot study right now on electrification of bus systems, evaluation of routes and climate and hills, all the items that go into or factor into performance of electric buses. And then we're actually getting a presentation from Lyft today on their new concierge system, which is sort of allows for agencies or organizations to book trips for customers, so that it sort of is an end run around the mobile phone smartphone limitation and allows for sort of a broader use of Lyft and Uber. So we are certainly pursuing, all of the latest options. And we'll keep the JTC up to date as we investigate these further and come up with, exactly what customers are looking for and try and match that up to our services.
And I know that the MBTA ran, I think they had 6 buses in operation that were battery electric buses. I think they're going through trying to see how those operate. I know at least some of them had some issues in the cold weather. Anything else?
Any other questions for Terry?
Yes, Madam Chair. I have a question, please. Seth
Go ahead.
Kashish, GPI. The question that I have is the driverless cars and trucks. Has that been playing any factor as far as your study goes?
I'm not sure of the question.
The driverless cars and trucks. Is that something that you have looked into as part of your study?
No, and this isn't necessarily, this isn't really a study, this is the hobby. This was just information that I've collected and thought people would be interested in. So there's nothing official, nobody's given me any money for it yet, but I enjoy kind of collecting it and asking probing questions. I will be curious to see, I think if the question is with the automated vehicles, I think where we're going to see the greatest amount of adoption is in trucking, and in trucking using the interstate, because the kind of the economics of that makes a lot of sense. And I think you'll see a much slower adoption of that among personal vehicles.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sid. Thank you, Terry. Any
Great.
other questions, Terry?
Thank you so much. I think everyone really appreciated it.
Good luck. You've got a lot of challenges ahead of you.
Yeah, we do.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Sure.
Great
All right.
presentation.
Good. Thank you very much.
You can come
And-
back
and-
anytime and share your personal studies with us.
All
Good
right.
information.
And feel free to reach out if you have any questions about the data or information I collected.
Thank you again.
All
Thank
right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Going to move on to item B, which is the Greater Attleboro Taunton Regional Transit Authority, GATRA, and that would be Paul.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like you guys bring you an update on our other transit operating authority in our region. Currently, GATRA is still operating at 50% capacity. Ridership is still quite low due to the pandemic, but they are seeing some success in their services. For example, the on-demand service using like a Uber and Lyft in South Plymouth is still being quite successful. And they are recently launching an on-demand service in Pembroke. So they're pretty excited about that. And they're looking forward to seeing what the ridership will be once that gets more widely known that that service is offered and people start to become accustomed with it. So things are moving quite along in Pembroke, and they're in Plymouth as well through GATRA, and they're kind of leading the way in this area in regards to this type of service. So it's quite exciting to see.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions of Paul? Okay, moving on to item C, South Coast Rail Project, and that would be Paul again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So South Coast Rail moves along as we all know. Most of the construction work is taking place south of our region, obviously, in the areas of New Bedford, Fall River, but things are moving north as we speak. Currently, right now, they have begun tree clearing and culvert replacement and other grading of station areas for example, Middleborough, Lakeville, the new station that's going to be built there in anticipation of South Coast Rail. And then also they're clearing trees and replacing culverts on the way up along the row to East Taunton now. So things are moving quite along. They've already had 3 public outreach sessions. And so with new ones coming soon. So things are moving along quite nicely in regards to South Coast Rail. While nothing in our region yet, it will be affecting us soon.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions for Paul on South Coast Rail? Hearing none. Item 6, which is old business. It's the 2021-2025 Transportation Improvement Program implementation, and that would be Charlie.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So as we're rolling ahead in implementation of federal fiscal year 2021, the 2 projects on your screen have been advertised for construction bids by Massdot, and the bids on the Easton project have been open, and the Avon bids are expected to be open in March. And the 3rd project, if you could scroll down on the screen a little bit, Stoughton improvements at Richard Wilkins Elementary School, that's on track for advertising later in the 3rd quarter of federal fiscal 2021. So that's good news. Further down in right there in 2022 is Pembroke. That's where we have a specific update on project moving ahead in the design process. So on the Pembroke Route 36 project, we saw that plan specifications estimate, this is actually a resubmission package to Massdot, and this was submitted to them back in early February. So that's good to see that project in an advanced state of design and readiness as we roll into federal 2022, which is only, what, 6 months away. So that's what we had for specific updates on this list. Under item 7B later on, we're going to have some further updates on projects in terms of project readiness. So if anybody has any questions at this time on this list, can certainly entertain that.
Hearing none, I'm going to move right on to item 7B, which is the development of the 2022 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program. And this would be the review of projects, including evaluation, criteria, and results from the TIP readiness days. And that would be Charlie again.
Great, thank you, Madam Chair. So though the TIP is a 5-year document, it's actually updated on an annual basis, and every year we add a year on to the end of the project list. So as part of that process on an annual basis, there are kind of 2 things that happen behind the scenes, if you will. One is TIP readiness days, and that's a collaborative effort by and between Massdot and the staffs of the MPO. What we do is look at all of the projects in the universe and determine if the year that the project is currently programmed in the current TIP is that a reasonable year given the state of readiness. So it's a collaborative effort across the divisions of Massdot, whether it's the district office, the right-of-way bureau, or the environmental office, individual project managers and the like, and they collaborate and say, hey, if this project is in 2023 right now, given status of the design, does it make sense to keep it in 2023, or should it move out a year? Or hey, sometimes this is advancing really quickly through the design process without a lot of questions or hurdles. Perhaps it could be done a year earlier, if you will. So this is a collaborative process, and then once everybody has had a chance to look at their projects, do their homework, we meet virtually to go over line by line, project by project. And this year and last year it was led by Ben Muller from the Massdot Planning Office. He kind of emceed the entire effort. So shout out to Ben for his effort on this. And this actual TIP day and TIP readiness has been underway for multiple years. I think it dates back to early 2000s, if you will, when we used to all travel into Boston, compare notes, but now we've adapted to doing it in a virtual environment. But the end product is the same as enhanced coordination on project readiness. And then step 2 of this process behind the scenes is We as the MPO staff evaluate all of the projects based on transportation evaluation criteria, and it's items such as condition, mobility, safety, community effects, land use, economic development, and environmental effects. As an example, on the condition aspect, one of the things we would look at is magnitude of pavement improvement. In the event that, say, a PCI, pavement condition index of a road segment is at 50, and the resultant project will bring that PCI up to a 95. That's a certain magnitude of improvement. But if we had a PCI of 75 out of 100, and you're going to go from 75 to 95, the magnitude of improvement is certainly less. So that would technically receive a lower score. So what the evaluation criteria helps us do is, if there are times where there are one or more projects that are competing for the same slot within the TIP, the evaluation criteria can say, well, this one scored higher on the evaluation criteria, so that might be a tiebreaker, if you will, as to be more of a preferred project. So what we have now on the screen is actually the universe of projects, and we'll go through this list really quick, and we'll share the results of TIP Readiness Day. The first four projects we actually talked about already in some way, shape, or form. But I note the Pembroke project is the first one where we're seeing it. Readiness Days confirmed that 2022 is a reasonable year to keep that project programmed in. And I'll note on here is when you see shading of green or red, that would denote a recommendation from the TIP Readiness Days whether that project should either advance to an earlier date in the terms of it being shaded in green with this Avon Stoughton pavement preservation work on Route 24. It's currently in 2022, but 21 is highlighted in green, so that's a potential recommended year for that project to move up to. Now the next project on the list is Plymouth intersection improvements and related work at Center carrying Lyman Street. And the second project down, actually these two projects will be combined into ultimately one project where they cross some common geographies. But note that this project is currently programmed in 2022, but the recommendation from the TIP Readiness Days was that it should move out to 2023, particularly where it's going to be combined with this additional project. Now moving on, Stoughton intersection improvements and related work at Central, Canton, and Tosca Drive. This project has been under design, and you see there's no red or green shading. So what Readiness Days did was confirm that 2023 was a realistic year of programming for that project. The next project down is Stoughton quarter improvements on Route 138, and this is actually funded, advanced, constructed over 2 years. And similar to the previous project, there was no change in the recommended year of program. The first year would be 23 and the second year would be 24. The next project down is Brockton Route 123, Center Street at Plymouth Street, signalization and geometric improvements. Massdot believed that given the state of readiness and the design, the 25% design is scheduled to be delivered to Massdot in June. But given that time frame, Massdot has recommended that this project actually move out 1 year to 2024. And the next project is Plumpton Bridge Replacement Winnetoxet Road over Winnetoxet River. It's currently in 24, and 24 was the recommended year of programming. I should note that though it's a recommended year of programming, one of the things that we need to do is work with the MPO to develop several scenarios of project programming and then take all this information into account, because there might be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different scenarios for the MPO to consider. Abington improvements at Hancock and Chestnut, still pre-25% design, so Massdot was comfortable with keeping it in 2025. And the next project down is in Brockton, Lyman Grove, Summer Street, and replacement of Grove Street Bridge, currently in 2025. It's and that was a concurrent with the TIP Readiness Days assessment. The next project down is Duxbury. This is the exit 10 ramps signalization at Route 3 and Route 3A, 2025. Our understanding is that the town is potentially looking to bring a warrant article to the spring town meeting to secure funding for the design of this project. And so this is where we're shifting from the current tip to potential projects in the new tip. And this last project on this screen is Easton corridor improvements on 138, including signalization and geometric improvements at Elm Street. And the question we asked to Massdot was, hey, could this be a potential 25 or 26 project? And they confirmed, yes, this would be a realistic project in terms of state of readiness. It's currently at 25% design and under design. So another project we're looking at for potential inclusion is the Hanson corridor improvements on Route 14. And Massdot concurred with, perhaps either 2025 or 2026 for this project. And next series of projects are currently not programmed. This Avon improvements at Route 28, Spring and Harrison Boulevard. It's actually a brand new project. It was just approved by the project review committee at Massdot in late January. So it's not at this time being considered for programming. It's in such a infancy in its design. Brockton improvements at Crescent, Quincy and Massasoit. It's our understanding that this project is somewhat idle at the moment, and the last time a 25% design was submitted was in 2015. The next two projects, and both are in East Bridgewater. These are recently approved projects by the Massdot Project Review Committee, so still early in the design phase and to not being considered for regional target funds. But I note that these two East Bridgewater ones and the previously mentioned Avon project, it's all high crash locations, so it's potentially going to be funded with statewide HSIP funds. And the next project down is a project Easton resurfacing and related work on 138. And Massdot is currently taking a look at the segment that's south of 138, south of Belmont Street, between Belmont and perhaps Depot Street, whether there could be some type of pavement improvement job in that area. And the next project down, Hanover resurfacing and related work on Route 58, I believe has since been deactivated by Massdot out of the project queue. Massdot had done other spot improvements in that area. This project, Pembroke intersection improvements at Washington and Scoosett. It's a new project recently approved by Project Review Committee and not really in the mix of potential programming at the moment. And this is another of those HSIP projects. Stoughton reconstruction of Turnpike Street. It's our understanding that a preferred alternative has been selected by the community in Massdot, and the most recent cost estimate that we've seen on this project is about $25 million. And it's still in an early pre-25% design, so not really being considered for programming at the moment. And then the last project is Stoughton intersection improvements at Canton School and Summer Street. This was recently approved by the Project Review Committee and still really early in the design process and not really a realistic project for potential programming. But that's a quick rundown of some of the results of TIP Readiness Day. And our next step is to develop some preferred scenarios in tandem with the MPO. And at the MPO meeting on March 16th, they'll be debating, deliberating, and potentially selecting a preferred set of TIP projects.
Thank you, Charlie. Any questions of Charlie at this time?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Charlie and Hanson, it's on 25, 26. Is that because of money? You know?
Well, that's one of the things, because it's not
Has
Currently-
Hanson paid 25% because they got that in?
Hanson has a designer, it's Environmental Partners, and they've submitted the 25% design that came in, I think, this past May. So
Okay,
one of the things that we're looking at is, what could be a potential landing spot for that project for programming in the new tip. So
but
that,
it concerns money too, right?
well, one of the things we have a financial constraint that we have to adhere to, and we only have so much to program. But that's one of the things, like if it exceeds the regional target, just as that Stoughton Route 138 project, we funded it over 2 years. So one of the things we're working now is programming scenarios to look at which projects we can bring in, and hopefully we can bring in multiple projects. So
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Don. Any other questions for Charlie on this? Hearing none. Thank you so much, Charlie, for that presentation. I'm moving on to item 8, Community Local Technical Assistance Studies. Bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'll just quickly go through my update here. So we completed a technical analysis study for the town of Plymouth. That was to look at existing speed zoning on Clark Road and Beaver Dam Road. And I know the town is at least interested in the idea of lowering the speed limit in the area of the Pine Hills development. So we collected data, we did some analysis, provided them guidance on appropriate speed limits based on federal highway guidance. So that's been distributed to the town, and I know the town's mulling it over. We're also going to recollect the data. When we collected that data, it was off-peak, off-season. And if you're familiar with that area, Clark Road and Beaver Dam Road is it's basically the main connection between Route 3 and White Horse Beach. So we'll collect it post-Memorial Day to capture the peak seasonal conditions on that roadway as well. So that continues to be studied. The town of Plumpton, they've asked us to provide some technical assistance and guidance on establishing safety speed zones in the town in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 90, Section 18B. So that'd be a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit in specific safety zones. So we're continuing to work with the town on that. City of Brockton, they've requested road safety audits for a couple of intersections, Main Street at Forest Ave. And this will actually be combined with a road safety audit that we unfortunately had to cancel last year because of pandemic. We had a road safety audit scheduled for Main Street and Nilson Street, and I think that was scheduled for April. We had to cancel that because of the pandemic. So we'll pull that back in, and we'll do these road safety audits together. So Main Street at Forest, Main Street at Nilson, and then the newest request is Pearl Street at Torrey Street. So the timeline for these is later this spring or early summer. And just continue to run down the list of what we have going on. So Avon, continuing to do a data analysis for Route 28 at Harrison Boulevard and East and West Spring Street. That'll supplement that. It'll supplement the design for that tip project that Charlie spoke of. Brockton, I spoke of those two. Duxbury, this later this spring, we'll be doing a follow-up traffic study in that town. Previously, we had traffic counts throughout the town as the town prepared to establish a townwide, establish municipal speed zoning of 25 miles per hour on several roadways. They've since established those speed zones, so we'll be doing a study to see what the effects are if traffic is actually slower. And Plymouth talked about that. Plumpton talked about that. In Stoughton, we have a traffic study for Turnpike Street to help the town establish speed zoning on that roadway. So that's what we have going on in the LTA program. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to entertain them. No,
Thank you, Bill, very much. Great presentation.
thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm going on to item 8B, which are the staff reviews on ENF, EIRs, and MPCs. Kyle?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
We've quite a bit of new ENFs this month. First up is the Red Mill Road Water Treatment Plant in Easton. And that consists of a construction of a water treatment plant at 12 Red Mill Road in Easton. And that'll include utility work near Well Station 3 and a new generator at Well Station 5, as well as a residual management lagoon system. Next up is the Mbta service level reduction, and that's statewide. As you know, Mbta has continued to run service at pre-pandemic levels. So they're going to be cutting back service where there are fewer riders. So the goal is to have these services accessible to people who rely on the transit network, and that they're referring to that program as the Forging Ahead. Next up is the Downtown Trout Brook Redevelopment Plan in Brockton. And the boundary of the redevelopment area consists of the CSX property, which is former rail yard for freight rail and surrounding properties. And the potential build out from this plan would be residential apartments, single family detached houses, commercial flex lots, retail office on the ground floor, and a public safety building or commercial flex. And the Old Colony Planning Council put together a comment letter for this project. And lastly is the Old Pine Drive well development in Hanson. So the town of Hanson proposes to construct a new water supply source for its residents and businesses. The town's existing 4 wells have a Mass DEP approved yield of 1.364 million gallons, but they usually can't produce that much in the drier seasons. And they usually rely on water from the city of Brockton. So the new construction of the water supply source will allow Hanson to be independent from Brockton for its water demands. And this will provide consistent water quality to Hanson customers and will allow Hanson to better balance its withdrawals with respect to the town basins. And that concludes the MIPA report.
Any questions for Kyle?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
No, I just have another thing. Hanson's fortunate to be on 2 watersheds. We are on the Taunton watershed with 1 section of wells, and the new wells that we're trying to get in are in the North River watershed, and we're fortunate that way. And we're trying to get it through, but then again, it always takes a lot of money to do it. So I just wanted to let Charlie know on that.
Thank you, Don, for adding to that. And thank you, Kyle, for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Good job. And we're coming on to, it looks like number 9 is adjournment. Do I have a motion on the floor?
So,
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Do we have the transportation open enough for all transportation issues or needs?
I would like to bring up an issue I'm having here in Hanson. This is Debbie.
Hi, Debbie.
How are you?
Good.
We have a culvert here in Hanson at Pratt Place that I've been looking at to submit for the culvert grant. However, upon real close examination, it's not really viable for that grant, but it's in imminent danger of failing. And I got a quote for repair at $1.2 million, of which we don't have any funding for. So I am looking for some resources or direction if anybody can help me try to figure out how I'm going to move forward with that replacement of that culvert. We don't have time. It's really in bad shape. So that was what I wanted to see if anybody here had any ideas or direction for that.
Okay, floor is open if someone wants to respond to that.
Deb, is that a public facility or private?
It's a public roadway and it's a culvert. It serves 3 houses on the other side, but it goes over a Indian Head Brook there, and if it fails, we're going to be in real big trouble.
Yeah, I wonder if this would be an eligible thing for the Massdot Small Bridge Grant Program. Shane Souza down at the district office.
Okay.
There's a contact. I can send you his email.
That'd be awesome, Charlie.
Thank you, Debbie.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for listening anyway.
Good luck with that, Deb.
Thanks.
Yeah. Any other open transportation issues at this time?
I'll just recognize, so I was just looking at the chat room, Vivian Ortiz from Safer School. She had noted that our region had been shared between two representatives from Safer School, and they've done some reorganizing, and Vivian's actually going to be covering the entire OCPC region, which is great. And she's asked to be on the JTC agenda at some point, so we'll definitely be having her, if not next month, and maybe the following month, but sometime in the near future, we'll be having a presentation from Safer School.
That would be great, Bill. Thanks for following up on that. Any other open comments? Thank you all so much for attending today. We have great attendance as usual. Thank you to all the staff members. And I think I'm at 9 for adjournment. Do I have a motion on the floor?
Motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. See you at the next meeting. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.